He's the former president and publisher of the Sun Herald, and now he's on the radio. Welcome to Coast View with Ricky Mathews on SuperTalk Mississippi Gulf Coast 103.1.
Welcome to Coast View. I hope you're having a great day, and thank you for joining us here on Coast View, where we celebrate every single day the people who are making coastal Mississippi such a great place to live, work, and play. And thinking of this as a great place to live, work, and play, there's some incredibly good news out of two recent surveys about coastal Mississippi and how we rank relative to the rest of the country. And this is something we're going to celebrate. The first one is Smart Asset. Now, this is a financial technology company. I'd never heard of Smart Asset before. Maybe I've heard the company, but I've never dove into understanding what is this company. And what I discovered is that they are a web-based company. They're a very data-driven company that work on providing web-based financial advice, and they're focused on home buying and investing, retirement, and taxes and more. You kind of know the story of these kinds of companies, but this is a very innovative, award-winning company, and their content reaches about 65 million users each month. That's a pretty significant number. So to rank well in the survey they just did is really saying something. And here's what they did. They took 218 beach communities and they ranked them on four real estate metrics. One was median household value, the other average number of rooms per house, then median monthly property taxes paid, and then monthly housing costs. Biloxi ranked number one on the list as the most affordable beach town in America. They overtook 2020's winner, Gulfport. But Gulfport wasn't far behind. They were number two. So Gulfport is ranked high, either number one or number two 2 years in a row. So let's show you this graphic for the Facebook and YouTube audience, and for the people who are listening on 103.1. I'll share it with you. So number one was Biloxi, number two Gulfport, and then it was Port Arthur, Pensacola. Guess who was number four? Number five is Ocean Springs. Number six, Bay St. Louis. And then Freeport, Texas, Melbourne, Florida, Daytona Beach, and then Fort Pierce, Florida. That is incredible to have four cities of coastal Mississippi in the top 10. It's not only incredible, but it's incredibly important. And then the city of Gulfport and coastal Mississippi has also been recognized as a top 10 community in the nation for military families. The good news came from a nationwide survey that was released by the Navy Federal Credit Union and Operation Homefront. Gulfport ranked the 9th best city for veterans in the country. And this study looked at factors like cost of living, housing prices, crime rates, community diversity, outdoor recreation opportunities. This kind of fit, hearing this news about military families really kind of fit with the theme of the show yesterday. I had the pleasure of interviewing. If you missed it, you can go to the SuperTalk Gulf Coast Facebook page and watch it. But I had the pleasure of spending some time with recently promoted Chief Petty Officer Justin Urban from the CB base. And one of the points that I made at the beginning of that conversation is that I don't think most people, some people know this, some people may have forgotten it, but maybe a lot of people don't realize that there are 7 military bases in Mississippi. And that doesn't count the significant Air National Guard presence at Gulfport in what is called the Gulfport Combat Readiness Training Center. Just along the coast, you've got Keesler Air Force Base, Naval Station Pascagoula, and the Naval Construction Battalion Center, better known as the CB base in Gulfport. So with all of this said, this is great news. We're going to have a conversation, a really in-depth conversation about the military and how we treat veterans and the opportunity for them to retire here. We're going to have a deep conversation about that, but we're going to also talk about the Smart Asset survey as well. I've got Billy Hewes, the mayor of Gulfport, and Stacey Pickering, the executive director of the Mississippi Veterans Affairs, joining me this morning. Good morning, guys. How you doing?
Good.
Hey, doing good, Ricky.
Glad to be with
you. It's good to see you. So there's a lot to break down. Now, people who listen to Coast View obviously know who Mayor Hewes is, but they may not have heard your name in a while, Stacey. And so let me remind people, you're the executive director of the Mississippi Veterans Affairs. You served 3 terms as the state's 41st state auditor. You've been involved in the National Guard for many, many years through the 186th Air Operations Group. You're a chaplain. You've done a lot of different things. So how have you been? Let's start with that.
Hey, thanks, Ricky, and good to be with you. Doing great. when I left the auditor's office 2.5, 3 years ago to take on this role, it's a great responsibility. It's a great mission to care for Mississippi's 187,000 veterans and their families. We've got young men and women who served their one hitch and off of active duty. They've taken that GI Bill benefit. They're on every college campus across Mississippi. We've got almost a couple of thousand at Mississippi State, at Ole Miss, Southern Miss. And so what we've done is put faculty and staff from our agency on staff to take care of those student veterans. And then we've also worked with our veterans who are looking to go in the workforce. We work with Ingalls, BT Halter, U.S. Marine on the Gulf Coast, a lot of our defense contractors, getting those veterans plugged in and working. And probably we're most well known when those veterans reach a senior adult age or need skilled nursing care. We run 4 nursing homes for veterans, 600 nursing home beds across Mississippi. Right now, our homes are in Oxford, Kosciuszko, Jackson, and Collins. And we announced last year with a groundbreaking that we're going to build a new home at Tradition on the Gulf Coast. And Mayor Billy Hewes, his staff have been very supportive and helpful. He was one of the first persons I talked to. And I said, Billy, 30% of Mississippi's veterans live on the Gulf Coast. We've got to get a home closer to them so they're not driving 2 hours to Collins to visit their father, their husband, their grandfather. And so that was one of the first conversations I had. Billy and I served in the state Senate, that I turned to him as a resource and said, hey, where do we start? Where do we start looking? And so the reality is it's approved by the VA for funding. We're just waiting for federal dollars now to drop to build a state-of-the-art facility on the Gulf Coast to care for our veterans.
So we're gonna dive into this study that has significant ramifications for coastal Mississippi and for the state and the marketing campaign that you're going to be doing. But before we go there, let's come back to Billy for a second. And Billy, you have to be thrilled to have ranked so high in this affordable beach community survey done by Smart Asset. That's got to thrill you.
Both of them on the Smart Asset piece. We've been running on that number for number one for about 3 years now. And the Realtors Association, National Realtors, based on our cost of living, ranked us number one as well in that same category. So it's good to see. And somebody asked me, said, well, why do you post it up this year? Biloxi's number one. I said, look, we can share. But to your point, it really speaks well of our entire coastal community and what a special place this is. And things like what happened with the Veterans Affairs. This particular ranking kind of affirms what we've always known. We have been a wonderful place to live, work, and play, as you say, but also to retire. That's that living portion. And folks who come through here, a lot of times, Keesler's their first stop after boot camp. And they say, well, you're sending me to where? And they come here and they say, I'm coming back. And the same thing with the CBs here. That's a city within a city. Both Keesler and the CB base are. And a lot of them, when they retire, they'll come and say, look, we CBs, we're engineers. You got any work in the city of Gulfport? You need some public works for folks. And they like what they see here, the climate, but our people. So there's so many great things. Just doing Milton Cigarra's, the secret coast. And what I talk about, I had no idea how great it was here. And so Stacey's work has augmented that. And he really has raised the profile of the Veterans Affairs. When we were serving in the legislature together, we really had a kind of a fringe idea of what they did, but he has really raised the profile and the elevation. And this distinction that we've gotten as being number 9 in the nation, I think brings a great spotlight on his work, but on the state of Mississippi, that this is really one more example, affirmation of how awesome it is to be here and how you can make the most of your monies and enjoy your families.
There's no doubt about it. We'll on the next segment, we're going to pick up what does this mean and how does it create opportunities for us going forward. But I want to make the point, and coming back to you for a second, Billy, it's really interesting. When I talk to leaders in the military who have retired, often they retire here. They come here from New York and California and all these places. They come here, they get stationed, and they fall in love with coastal Mississippi. And they pick retiring here as opposed to going back home. You see that over and over again, don't you?
All the time. And if you travel, you still run against the way we're stigmatized and stereotyped. And sometimes we win on one person at a time. But Stacey's heard me say this a million times. The people who are critical of our people and our state have never set foot here. And so that's kind of a mission that we have as public officials, is to be those ambassadors and start creating ambassadors as you do. You understand the importance of that. Everybody who comes here is an opportunity for them to tell our story. So it really is the exposure we try to get to folks to get them down here. You probably have talked to Milton or others, but in this COVID pandemic situation, people are, again, continue to discover, and we're leading the nation in the tourism sector as far as being able to keep things vibrant, is because not just how we market ourselves, but what we have to market. It's a really, really special, easy place to come and go to.
Yeah, the one point that I continue to make, and I'll mention something about Matthew McConaughey at the opening of the next segment, but this the fact that we've learned through our own adversity that buildings don't make a community, the people do, and at the heart and soul of coastal Mississippi, and Mississippi for that matter, are amazing people. And Matthew McConaughey actually makes a challenge, and we'll come back to that because it really comes back to what makes this place so special, and why are these folks in the military? I mean, I know that you've got these metrics about housing costs and cost of living and all that. At the end of the day, though, they fall in love with this place because of the people who are here, and that is our competitive advantage. We'll come back and talk more about that in just a second with Mayor Billy Hewes of Gulfport and Stacey Pickering, the Executive Director of the Mississippi Veterans Affairs. See you in just a sec.
Coast View on SuperTalk 103.1 is brought to you by Allen Toyota on I-10, exit 38 Gulfport. See all of the incredible inventory at allentoyota.com. And remember, when you think Toyota, think Allen Toyota.
Talking to the people that help make the coast such a unique place to live. This is Coast View with Ricky Mathews on SuperTalk Mississippi Gulf Coast 103.1.
Welcome back to Coast View. We're celebrating some terrific accomplishments of coastal Mississippi in 2 surveys, but now we're going to really focus on the military veterans area and the survey that was conducted that put Gulfport number 9 in the nation. And we're going to talk about why that's significant. And just before we went to break, we were talking more about the secret coast, when people who had this vision of Mississippi in their head, who haven't been here, they're doing themselves and us a misjustice. They should come here and see for themselves what's at the core of coastal Mississippians and Mississippians. One of the things that Matthew McConaughey is involved in is he has become the Minister of Culture in Austin. I don't know if you guys have seen that or not, but what he's doing is, he's from Austin, and he's really focused on the growth that is happening in Austin. And he says people come here from California and New York and other places. And he doesn't want Austin to become the place that they left. They're coming here to experience what is so great about Austin. And he said that we can grow so quickly, we're going to forget what's at the core of this incredible place. So what they're doing is they're working to capture the essence of the values and the sense of place that is Austin. And they're actually going to do it as a marketing campaign back to the citizens of Austin so that newcomers will be exposed to it. Austin residents will be exposed to it. And what he says is that in this very political charged world that we live in, where there's so much polarization, if we're trying to come together on the political dimension, we're going to lose before we even get started. But it's these values, this sense of place that is what brings us together. This is the way we can actually come together. And his point is that what they're doing in Austin is actually transportable around the world. So it's transportable here to coastal Mississippi. We could capture the essence of ourselves and market them back to ourselves. But at the end of the day, it is those attributes that transcend the political divide that we see that makes this such a great place. Stacey, why don't you sort of comment about it? Billy, we'll come back to you next.
Ricky, that's exactly why we ran the ad in the Sun Herald this past weekend and the editorial, because we need to let ourselves know as Mississippians, hey, we look what we've accomplished and look who we are. We don't need to forget that on the Gulf Coast, not only does 30% of our veteran population choose to call the 3 coastal counties home. I'm not talking the 4th congressional district or the coastal region. I'm talking the 3 coastal counties have 30% of our veteran population that choose Mississippi Gulf Coast to be their home. That's phenomenal. And we need to remind everybody it's because there's job opportunities. Mayor Hewes and I were talking, Billy and I were talking earlier this morning that, everybody you mentioned a military retiree, they think of a gray-haired couple living at the villages in Florida. No, you're talking 40, 45-year-old families with junior high children that are coming here. We have 9 school districts on the Gulf Coast that are A or better, including Gulfport leading the way. These are first-class school districts, low cost of living, job opportunities, and great recreation access all up and down the Gulf South. That's where military retirees want to be. And then the fact that you've got 2 large military bases, 3 if you want to count Stennis, where they have access to B-access and commissaries, hospitals on base. They don't have to leave their military community. They can still stay connected, and that is exciting for veterans. When I took this job over, I just got back from 3 months active duty in San Antonio, and it flustered me that 30,000 veterans are choosing to move to San Antonio. And nothing against them. They've done a great job marketing and convincing America that the ditch that runs through downtown is a river. They're not on the coast. They're not in the mountains. They have a small dammed up river that they call the Riverwalk. And they've convinced everybody to move there. Why aren't they moving to the Gulf Coast? And just a year and a half ago, I was on active duty for 45 days at Ramstein in Germany, and my secretary, my executive assistant, she and I were talking. She's already retired from the Air Force. Her husband retires in about 2 years. And I said, where are you moving to? Where are you going to retire? You're going back home? She says, well, we thought about going back to Wisconsin, but we really love Gulfport and Biloxi, Mississippi. She didn't know where I was from. And I asked her why. Well, as Billy mentioned earlier, when they finished boot camp at Lackland, they came straight to Keesler for tech school. They finished tech school and they came back as instructors, and that's where they met. They had 9 and 10 and 12-year-old kids, and they said, we got good school districts, it's safe, we like the values, and that's what we can't forget is who we are as coastal Mississippi.
Yeah, there's a magnet there for sure. Billy, what comes to mind when you think about this minister of culture role and the challenge that Matthew McConaughey has?
I think it's a great example, and it really is a good kind of parallel to what we've been trying to do all along, talking about who's telling your story and how do we do that. And, as Stacey's talking, there are a lot of coastal communities that have many of the same characteristics and amenities that we do. It's just, I think, how we promote them, how we do it. So, for a lot of us, you could start with the food and stop there too. It's just world class, but there's so much more. The natural resources, I think, quite frankly, we still got a long way to go to take full advantage of those with ecotourism and other things. But it really is our people. We've had our salute to the military for decades, showing how important the military is to this community. And it's not just an economic calculation. We really do like people and we like having them here. But it's those little things that make the difference. So if there's a parade or a function in Gulfport or Biloxi or any of them, we try to incorporate and invite and have a space for our veterans to come participate. The Armed Forces Retirement Home, which is an awesome facility on the beachfront overlooking the Gulf. It is one of the best facilities, I think, in the retired military community. And a lot of those folks can't get out and about. They're aged and infirmed, and some of the best thing they can do is get to their balcony or the window, or maybe get wheeled out front. During cruising the coast, we dedicate, an afternoon for a parade where the cruisers drive their old classic cars in front of this home for, an hour or 2 hours straight for these folks to come, maybe relive some of their childhood or their teen years or whatnot, but with memories, but just doing something special. And not every community does that. So it's the little things that I do think makes a difference on top of all the good that we've got going on.
Yeah, I can't help but remember a story that Captain Bill Whitmire Myers mentioned to me. He recently retired. You guys know him from the CB base. Said that he was tied up and that his neighbors came together and helped his wife decorate the house for Christmas. And he came home and the lights were up, and he said where he came from, you'd have never seen that. You just didn't see the camaraderie of a neighborhood like that, and that touched him. And he tells more stories like that, but it really does help you understand the heart and soul of coastal Mississippi. And the one thing that I continue to talk about is that when you build resiliency into the DNA of coastal Mississippians, when you have this ability to bounce back the way we do, when we continue to have dogged determination to rebuild or recover or whatever it is, pandemics, algae blooms, hurricanes, whatever it might be, that you get to, when you're in that moment, you get to see the heart and soul of a community in ways you would never have been able to see it before. And there's something about that just attracts people. And then you add to that all these other things that are like military health care and those things. And it makes for such a great story. So you guys have a plan now, right? To really market heavily this whole notion of Gulfport and the Mississippi Gulf Coast.
Ricky, right now, from a state perspective, we started a year ago, we did a pilot program to see, can we reach veterans across the country? So we targeted 22 military bases, Air Force and Navy bases where Seabees are. And so we reached out to them via social media. We had over 4,000 veterans said, we want more information about Mississippi. So we've met with the Secret Coast. We met with the economic development folks to reach back out and have them come, visit, spend time, move, because we're not going to tax your military retirement. We got great jobs opportunity, great infrastructure, and a great cost of living. 10% less than the national average is on the Mississippi Gulf Coast. That's why Gulfport is leading the way in the top 10 cities in America for veterans to retire to. And so what we're fixing to do now, we're educating on the Gulf Coast through the print media and broadcast media this month, and we'll be doing a social media campaign targeting those same 22 military bases, again, coming up in this month of February, reaching out to them, giving them a way to reach back to us, come visit. Hopefully we'll have a opportunity to raffle off a free weekend on the Gulf Coast like we did last year, and get the veterans to come and be a part of who we are. Come taste the food, dip your toe in the water, visit the casinos, visit the islands, and see why this is where you should retire and raise your family.
Billy, there's no doubt in your mind that such a campaign will pay dividends, is there?
No, without a doubt, and it'll augment the word of mouth that is already out there. Retirees, they talk amongst themselves and they tell what's best, and they make comparisons on the available amenities, and you cannot discount the access to the commissaries, much less the medical care that is available to our veterans down here. It's huge. And you mentioned Captain Whitmire, commander of the Seabee base, and where did he retire? Right here. And he said, this is where I'm staying. So that's a great example. He tells our story and sings our song all the time. But he, like his predecessors and successors, they're great partners. We interact a lot and are able to do some pretty neat things together, sometimes even public-private partnerships, even though within the military framework, that's sometimes a challenge. A lot of bureaucracy there, but we've got folks that, CBs can do, right? And they sure do. And that's true.
They definitely do. Hey, when we come back, we're gonna take a break, and we'll continue our conversation with Mayor Billy Hewes of Gulfport and Stacey Pickering, who's the executive director of the Mississippi Veterans Affairs, and we'll continue the conversation about this great news for Mississippi.
Broadcasting safe and sound from the coastal Mississippi studios, this is Coast View with Ricky Mathews on SuperTalk 103.1. Coast View on SuperTalk 103.1 is brought to you by Allen Toyota on I-10 exit 38 Gulfport. See all of the incredible inventory at allentoyota.com. And remember, when you think Toyota, think Allen Toyota.
He's the former president and publisher of the Sun Herald, and now he's on the radio. Welcome to Coast View with Ricky Mathews on SuperTalk Mississippi Gulf Coast 103.1.
Welcome back to Coast View. We have Mayor Billy Hewes from Gulfport and Stacey Pickering, the executive director of the Mississippi Veterans Affairs, joining me. We're talking about great news for coastal Mississippi, and I think one of the points that you made, Stacey, a second ago is that one of the reasons why you ran advertising to coastal Mississippians is to some extent, just like Matthew McConaughey is sort of challenging us. We got to remind ourselves, the good news and why it's so important for us to do what we do, and how important the military community is to Mississippi, especially coastal Mississippi, and the role that veterans play. We can't do enough of that, can we?
We really can't. And that became clear to me last year. We hosted an event for local pastors on suicide prevention in the military community. And a dear friend of mine who pastors a large church, he said, Stacey, thank you for pulling back the curtain to this black hole on a map. He had never been on a military base. He didn't know what it looked like. And he just said it was a black hole to him. And so I think sometimes, whether it's where we're number one and number two for affordable living on the coast or beach towns, whether it's place for veterans, sometimes we have to remind ourselves so we don't believe the narrative we've been told, oh, we're Mississippi. No, we are actually on the top of some lists. We're a great destination to live. It's why I've chosen to raise my family here in Mississippi and invest my time and energy. And same thing for Mayor Hewes. This is home. And we want to share that. We want other people to come and be a part of that, not to change it. It'll be different, but we want them to come be a part of our community that makes Gulfport, Biloxi, Ocean Springs, and every other coastal town, my hometown of Laurel, where I live, makes it unique. And invite them to come be a part of it. Join us.
Yeah, so it's interesting to me, though, that within the context of making the point that this is a great place for military veterans to retire to, we can also remind people who already live here what I think maybe too often we might take for granted. Do you think that as well, Billy?
You know, the complacency kills, and you know, we have it pretty good here. And you know, I told folks that 99% of the time it's great. They said, "What about the hurricane?" Well, that's just the price of paradise, and we know how to come back from that and have a good time while we're at it for the most part. But I'm thinking, you know, what we do, my job as mayor is to try to enhance the attractiveness of our community. And there are a lot of components to that, but it's so much as quality of life and making the most of the resources. And I'm thinking through not just the beach town, the affordability ranking, but what have we done being a tourism market, that bread and butter, to enhance things? So, you know, Woody Bailey 20 years ago came up with this concept about 25 now of the cruise on the coast, and it's one of the largest in the nation, #1 ranked by USA Today. This aquarium, it was a monumental project, but it has received national notoriety, and USA Today just ranked it as the #4 new attraction in America. And so there are all sorts of recognitions like that. Fishbone Alley was recognized by United States Main Street. So we're getting national rankings and recognitions for these type of things. You know, the city livability, we took a lot of blighted areas with our parks. All these things are attractive to not just military retirees, but anybody who wants to look for a place to do things outside of stepping out, getting the paper, and going back in, to get out when COVID goes away and we can get out more. But the fact of the matter is outdoor activities are always encouraged. And so the more offerings we have, the more attractive these communities are. And I think some of those factors that we have worked towards continually challenge ourselves lead to groups like the veterans to recognize, you know what, this is good for military just because of the basis and those amenities, but these communities have a lot more going on, and that's why we like being there.
And that's what Coast View is all about. It's about celebrating that, but also helping educate people that to achieve the successes that you talked about just now, Billy, and the many more that you didn't mention, you just don't get there by luck. You get there because you got your nose to the grindstone and you have passion for it, and you see a vision, and you're overcoming obstacles. And the word that I use so often, dogged determination. We have so many leaders in coastal Mississippi who come together. And the other point that I make, and Stacey, you'll relate to this really well, and Billy talks about One Coast as articulately as anyone will. But the reality is that the communities that make up coastal Mississippi each have their sense of place. That sense of place is what makes that community so unique. But when you add them all together, it creates this incredible region, not just to visit and live, but I mean, economic engine for the rest of the state. We could go on and on about that. But you don't get there by just, serendipity. You get there because you got people who are willing to listen in the private sector, are willing to lead in the private sector, in the political sector, and the nonprofit sector. We're very fortunate here in coastal Mississippi to have that. You see it every day, don't you, Stacey?
Well, we do, and and living in Laurel, we're experiencing some of this with the hit TV show Hometown. And somebody asked me one time, I said, "Man, that was an overnight success." I said, "Yeah, 10 years overnight. It takes a lot of dogged effort, and we've got great leadership on the coast." And I've watched Billy's leadership when we served in the state Senate together, and that entire coastal delegation, how they work together for that region, which ultimately impacts the entire state of Mississippi. I'll be honest with you, the folks who come and walk by the downtown historic district of Laurel because of the TV show, some of them come spend the weekend, but many of them stop in on their way to the Gulf Coast. It's a package deal. And we've seen leadership all across Mississippi work to build this. And the coastal leadership from Fofo Gillich, when I called him last year and told him we're getting ready to host a national convention on the coast, I need a video. He stopped everything he did. And within a week's time, I had a welcome video from him saying, "Hey, welcome to Biloxi. Welcome to the Mississippi Gulf Coast. Here's some things you can do and where you can spend your money when you're here." And it's all of the leadership working together that makes the Mississippi Gulf Coast such a jewel in the crown of Mississippi.
Yeah, you reminded me when you said 10 years getting there about overnight success. There's a great documentary on Netflix about Pixar. And when Pixar achieves success, Someone said it was an overnight success, and Steve Jobs said, yeah, 10 years overnight success. I mean, the story, if you haven't seen it, it's just a fascinating story about bringing smart people together, and you can achieve anything that you set your mind to achieve. You've got some big events coming up, Stacey. Tell me about those.
Well, we do. You know, part of us, again, focusing where the veterans want to be on the Gulf Coast and all that the coast has to offer. Last year, pre-COVID, we had scheduled the very first Women Veterans Summit. We were going to have active duty, Guard, Reserve, and retirees and veterans, women attending. 7 states were represented out of 200 registration on Camp Base at Keesler. Colonel Blackwell, it was a great partnership with our staff and her staff putting that together and marketing it. We had to cancel it at the last minute because of COVID. We're getting ready to host that event this spring, and we'll be bringing a little over 100 so we can socially distance right now, but we'll build that and bring more veterans, female veterans in, because right now 10% of Mississippi's veteran population are female veterans. That number is going to grow to 20% over the next 10 years. We've got to make room and recognize their service and their uniqueness to it. I told somebody, you know, my great uncles and grandfathers' time period, there were not OBGYNs at the VA Medical Center. There are now. Because we have a very diverse workforce military. The other event is we're going to be hosting the National Association of State Veterans Homes. All my colleagues from around the nation, literally from Florida to Washington State, are going to be coming to the Mississippi Gulf Coast in August for our convention. About 400 people, massive trade show on nursing home care for our veterans and their families. And we're going to be introducing them and bringing them in. We're working to bring my counterparts, the executive directors, in as well, be a part of that. And so we're excited to introduce the Gulf Coast to a national audience outside of our regular retire here.
That's terrific. Billy, let's shift. Oh, by the way, before we get away from this, tell people how, if veterans are interested in getting more information, give them the website they can go to.
Ricky, I mean, that's the biggest thing for veterans and their family members. If they need access to DD-214s, any of their documentations, we can help them. If they want to file, we do 90% of all claims with the federal VA for appeals and benefits, all come through our office. We represent the American Legion, the VFW, and the state of Mississippi. It's msva.ms.gov, msva.ms.gov, or they can follow us on Facebook at MS Veterans, and they can keep up with all the announcements and new information that's coming out as far as benefits, access, and events honoring our veteran community across Mississippi.
So let's shift gears. Stacey mentioned the new facility at Traditions, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that in the next segment. But when you think about Joe Canizaro's vision, I mean, this multi-year vision for Traditions and the impact it's had on helping, you know, coast of Mississippi, not just Gulfport, but like to kind of move up toward the north. Man, this guy has really put his money where his mouth is, hasn't he, Billy?
I tell you what, you know, you talk about a local boy done well and putting it back in his old hometown. Joe has just been a remarkable fellow. What impresses me the most is his vision, his stick-to-itiveness, because, you know, he started this master plan community concept before we ever put those 3 words together. You know, and he took ideas from other areas where he had traveled and saw and said, maybe this can work in my hometown. And even in the face of, you know, the largest natural disaster in America's history, with a huge recession, all sorts of things that worked against him, he stuck with it, and he has created that community that has a lot of synergy going on. And I think it's going to be a model and an example for generations to come. We're just scratching the surface. So I think the timing of Stacey with putting something that is very easly accessible to some major road arteries, those sorts of things, that is the growth path, the growth corridor. And thank goodness we had somebody who believed enough in his hometown, his community, South Mississippi, to invest personally and bring a really neat dream to reality.
Joe is really a visionary. When I went over to New Orleans to be president of NOLA Media Group, spent time with him over there, and his impact in that region is just as important as his impact over here. But when we come back, Stacey, you can remind people about why this is an important development, what's happening at Traditions in terms of your area of responsibility. And then we're going to shift gears and just get a quick update about the COVID situation for both of you guys. So we'll be back after this break.
talking to the people that help make the coast such a unique place to live. This is Coast View with Ricky Mathews on SuperTalk Mississippi Gulf Coast 103.1.
Welcome back to Coast View. We have Mayor Billy Hewes of Gulfport and Stacey Pickering, who's the Executive Director of the Mississippi Veterans Affairs. And we were talking about Joe Canizero, Blexian done well. We'll tell his story on Coast View soon. But he had this vision for traditions that has evolved into this incredible town, right there north of Gulfport and Biloxi. And the development that you guys are doing there is really critical to the overall mission of the Veterans Affairs. Tell us a little bit more about that, Stacey.
It is, and Joe's been a great partner. I mean, we talk weekly. He's brought us in on other aspects of the project and the relationship, just like he has Dr. King from William Carey, Dr. Graham from Gulf Coast Community College. It's really a community and a team effort. What we're doing, what we're bringing to the game is we will be building, you can see it for those that are watching us on Facebook. Over my right shoulder is a 100-bed nursing home facility. It'll be state-of-the-art, private rooms for all the veterans. We can build it from scratch and reflect what the medical needs are. We'll have literally a wing dedicated for memory care for Alzheimer's dementia patients. We'll be able to go ahead and build for bariatric, about 10% of our rooms for those that large obese residents that needs extra lift and capacity and space. So we're able to build for those kind of things, but also our main entrance is more of a town hall. It's not an institutional feel. We'll actually have small dining rooms on each wing so they can eat in their home, live in their home. But if they want to come out to the main street, there'll be a Stars and Stripes Cafe. It's not just a dining room, but it's going to be a Stars and Stripes Cafe. We're going to have a sports lounge. These are adult men, mostly men, a handful of women, and there's no reason they can't gather together for pool or to watch the football game. They may be in a wheelchair, they may be on a walker, but they can come together on Saturdays and Sundays for sporting events and those kind of activities. But it will serve the Gulf Coast in a very real way. It'll be about a $10 million annual economic benefit, $5 million in payroll, $4 million in contracts. You got to think from laundry services to durable medical goods across the board, as well as food services. We'll be running a complete large nursing home specifically for veterans on the Gulf Coast at Tradition.
That's incredible, and we'll look forward to all of this coming to fruition. Billy, real quick, what's your latest thinking on COVID?
No, it's continued to be a challenge, and we cannot let our guard down. We're far from being out of the woods on this one, Ricky, and I think you know that. We're trying to do just kind of send some messages out, this stay positive, test negative. The reality is we're hearing of the disease spreading further and faster right now than we were a month or two ago. So with the new strains and new variants, I think we're going to have to be vigilant as the vaccines become available. You talk about sharing information and whatnot. Robert Collier, whom you know, he sent me a text a couple of weekends ago. He said, hey, it's cold out there. Is there a way we can leverage the Coliseum and make that a central point? And I said, well, let me see what we can do. And we've got two competing hospitals, Lee Bond with his Singing River and Kent Nico with Memorial. And I said, guys, y'all think y'all might can play well together on this and work? And they said, without hesitation, they said, absolutely, great idea. Governor Reeves liked the idea as well. And as a result, we've got a place where folks can get it administered quickly. The trick now is making sure we get the vaccines available to us. That's not the only site, but that's an example of how partnerships come together. Some out of necessity, but when it makes sense, we've got enough leaders across this coast that said, let's get after it. This makes all the sense in the world, particularly for our seniors at that point, as folks who are 70 years and above, and they did not need to be exposed in this cold. And so everything I'm told, it's been working very successfully, but we look for collaboration, and this is one of those times where, again, we're trying to do right by our residents.
Stacey, we got about a minute to go. What's the headline for you guys?
Our biggest issue is we're encouraging everybody to get their vaccine. Our 4 nursing homes have been heavily hit. They're veterans. They're 95% male. Their comorbidity rates are higher. So we've had 95 veterans die from COVID-related illnesses where that was just enough to push them over. So we're telling our staff, our family members, everybody in the community, get vaccinated as soon as you can. Don't be fearful of it. So most of our staff, our residents, have now started having their second vaccine, and that will be completed on Friday for our homes to protect our veterans. But one bright spot and fun spot, the Republic of Korea sent us face masks, 5,000 masks this week for our Korean war vets. So even other countries where Republic of Korea, the prime minister literally sent me a letter and said, if it weren't for the Korean War veterans, we would not be a country today. We still want to say thank you. How else can we help? And that was from the prime minister of South Korea. And reaching out and saying, how can we care for Mississippi veterans?
What a great story. What a great story. This is a situation we've never done it before. So it was going to be a little sluggish in the beginning. But when you have the ability to collaborate, you have leaders coming together, figuring out amongst they may have been competitive before, like in the case of Kent Nico and Lee Bond. But both those guys are incredibly community minded. And, the opportunity to bring them together, Matt McDonald at the Coliseum, we're so proud that he had this opportunity to help facilitate that. And by all measures, going really well. I'm hearing just great reports. But we'll remind everybody, the tools that we've always had at our disposal are still the ones that we have today, which is wash your hand, don't touch your face. Close talking is an issue. Don't close talk to someone. Wear your face mask, protect the vulnerable. These have been the tools we've had. And now we've got a new one, get vaccinated. And the reports are the people who were a little reticent to get vaccinated, even they are getting vaccinated now because their friends are getting vaccinated. And the quicker we get vaccinated, the quicker we can get life back to our new normal, whatever that's going to be. Anyway, Billy Hewes, Mayor of Gulfport, and Stacey Pickering from the Mississippi Veterans Affairs, thank you so much for joining me this morning. I really appreciate it.
All right, man. Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned Matt, too, because he was on board from the start, too.
Yeah, Matt's been a terrific friend of Coast View and a great friend to the coastal Mississippi. Okay, that's it for today. We'll see you tomorrow morning.
Broadcasting safe and sound from the coastal Mississippi studios, this is Coast View with Ricky Mathews on SuperTalk 103.1.